Okay, let's take a journey back through time. Imagine we're in colonial America at the end of the 1700s. The King of England rules and the colonists are not happy with the King's absolute power.
Good evening, and welcome to Colonial Taxation Theatre. I will play King.
I will play Colonial 1.
Colonial 2.
See. King of England says, put your hands on your head. Right. King of England says, put your hands on your shoulders. Right. Put your hands on your face. King of England did not say, you're all out. And you know what? I'm short of cash. Slang for money. Which means I'm going to tax all of you.
That tears it.
It's war.
Oh no, war. Next week, war.
The Revolutionary War broke out, and eventually the colonies won their freedom from the English crown. But when the dust had settled, they were faced with the problem of making a new government. How to create a nation that would be fair and free.
One of the main questions facing the Founding Fathers was what type of government to set up. They had just had a bad experience with the Confederacy, which concentrated power in the states with a weak central government, and they were still smarting from the unfairness of the unitary system they had dealt with in England. What the Founding Fathers came up with was a system of government called federalism, which is sort of a combination of the two. Federalism calls for a strong national government, but still leaves some power in the hands of individual states.
And so the states were bound together under a strong national government, but still had some specific powers reserved just for them. Including, but not limited to, choosing their own license plate slogans.
The framers of the Constitution created a stronger national government than had been done with the Articles of Confederation. At the same time, they protected the interests of the states. A big concern the framers had was of putting way too much power in the hands of one individual or one branch of the government. To address this concern, they decided to separate the powers. Separation of powers divides government power between three federal branches: the executive, legislative, and judicial. The Constitution guarantees that each branch is interdependent upon the other branches via checks and balances.
Article 1 establishes the legislative branch of the American government. In other words, it created Congress.
Congress is what's called a bicameral legislature. A bicameral legislature is divided into two parts. In this case, the Senate and the House of Representatives. The legislature is responsible for making and passing laws.
Article 1 gives us the nuts and bolts of the Congress, like who's qualified to serve in the Senate and the House, the length of their terms, how senators and representatives are elected, and how we know the number of reps each state is entitled to.
The next article, Article 2, establishes another branch of government, the executive branch. It's called that because it has the power to execute the laws of the nation. And who has the power to execute the laws around this here land? The biggest Mac Daddy of them all. The head honcho, the top dog, the big cheese, El Presidente, the President of the United States.
Article 2 spells out the president's term of office and describes the necessary qualifications for the presidential office. It describes what the job actually is and spells out the rules for replacing the president should the president get kicked out of office or die.
Article 3 sets forth the description and structure of the judicial branch. For without Article 3, we would have no judicial branch. And without the judicial branch, we would have no Supreme Court. And if we didn't have the Supreme Court, law and order would become a thing of the past, and we'd all be forced into little cells and listen to nothing but Bananarama songs.
Article 3 of the U.S. Constitution establishes the judicial branch of our government. We also call this the federal court system, which includes the Supreme Court. Article 3 also defines the Supreme Court's jurisdiction. The Supreme Court was given the authority and jurisdiction to decide all cases that were considered on the federal level. This includes cases between states or between a state and federal government.
The creation of this judicial system worried some. You see, the Supreme Court is the highest court in the land. They have final say on lots of important issues. With this in mind, the Congress also set up inferior courts, federal courts lower than the Supreme Court.
So those are the origins of the three branches.